Inflation hit your restaurants. The prices of everything, wages, fuel, foodstuffs.
I think that inflation has hit everybody, obviously, and prices have gone up. But I think that inflation maybe has hurt restaurants less than other things for two reasons. One is I think that there's a narrowing of the gap between the cost of food in the market and the cost of food in restaurants, because the food in supermarkets has gotten so expensive. It's not so much more expensive to eat out anymore. And secondly, especially in New York, the inflation in other countries is worse than it is here, and therefore we're getting tremendous amounts of tourists coming into New York, and so that's helping the business. That's the good side of it.
Right. Volume of business, of course, if your restaurants are doing well, the additional volume that you have can offset part of that inflation. The additional numbers of people coming into the restaurant will offset that. And New York, as all American cities, are the beneficiaries, you just said, Werner, of the European who is coming here as we, the American, 20 years ago, went to Europe. Right. And if the average American could go to a foreign country and for a reasonable sum, he would have one of the best wines of the region, one of the best meals on the menu. Today you find that without knowing who the individual is, the food checker can tell you that he has a foreign visitor seated at table such and such because they've ordered the most expensive bottle of wine, they've ordered the most expensive dishes on the menu, and they're eating everything that you have on the menu. A first course, soup, main course, dessert, and after dinner brandies. They find that...
Are they Arabs, Italians?
No, they are Italians, Germans, French, Japanese, from all over the world.
It's cheaper than in other countries, is that in Sheldon?
That's right.
Much less.
The cost of going out to a restaurant in New York is so inexpensive in comparison to dining out abroad that we are truly a great bargain. You know, and Americans should realize
that. He's so right.
I
just came back from Paris. I mean, I'm back 3 days. And dinner for 4 in a good restaurant that would compare with your restaurants was $400.
And I had one
for
recently
4 people.
that was $800.
Warner was telling us something earlier.
I had one in one of the great restaurants of France, and it was a great meal, and I only had 1 bottle of wine. There were 4 people, and it was $800.
Is that possible? That's hard to believe.
No, that's right.
Not have been to Paris lately.
Right.
And England. London.
Yeah.
London is cheaper than Paris, but I had lunch for 6. It's a private club, but the lunch was...
Mark's Club.
Yeah, very good. Excellent
good
food.
Yes.
We had the carafe of wine. We didn't have any special vintage. Oysters, a couple of steak tartare, and some broiled halibut. $300.
Right.
But I tell you another thing. I don't know what kind of problems you have, since you all are getting foreign tourists, foreign visitors the way we are. We have trouble with the tipping. They expect the tip to be on the check. And it's very embarrassing to tell them that they have to tip.
We have the same situation, Vincent.
We put it on our check.
You do.
We put that gratuity not included, but they don't see it.
No,
Still
they
doesn't
don't see it.
explain the
Why don't you have it sung?
formula.
There are a number of places that do that now.
With
Put
our
it on the menu
American-
and on the check.
The waiters sing it.
Well, in our American economy, with our tax structure, it is not that easy to include a tip. If we include a tip or tell a customer that the tip is included, as we all know, it means that it is no longer considered a tip. It is a service, and that service means that it is a volume of business that you are doing to which the restaurant pays tax on, even if you give that tip to your waiter or captain or sommelier. In addition, you have to pay Social Security taxes on that income. You have to pay the FICA, the FICA. You lose your tip credit. Yeah. There are so many technicalities.
Any of you
involved.
Italian visitors or French or Germans or South Americans or even Arabs, your tip is not included in your check. So remember, it's 20% on top of the check for the waiter in order to make him happy.
Well,
How do critics...
Let's not just slide over that, because you've hit a very sensitive strain to restaurateurs who have different kinds of service, David, in different restaurants. At 21, as an example, we have captains, we have waiters, and sommeliers, as well as busboys and bartenders. And these are all considered service people. Now, people don't know how to tip when they go to different restaurants.
What should you tip the waiter?
A waiter should be given 15% of the check. And when there is a captain who is doing full captain service, taking the order, supervising service, and seeing that each of the people seated who are at the table are being properly served, that captain should be given a 5% tip.
We're up to 20.
Right. Now, if you are having wine, then a tip should be given to the sommelier, and that should, of course, come from that total overall 20% of the check. Now, how is a customer ever going to know, my God, how many people are to share in these tips?
You say
And
20% for all you folks?
Right. We ask our patrons to be discretionary in just marking on their check, add plus gratuities, and management very discreetly and properly will distribute tips to those people who have given service to those customers.
You buy that?
And we do it very
Yes, but
often.
I think it should be even a little bit more precise, because there are certain rules that if you put add gratuity, most of the time it's bound to go to only one group of people.
Yeah,
It
we have
should
trouble
be
with
for
that.
all.
We have
should be put
union
for all,
regulations on
captain
that.
and waiter and
We have trouble.
and,
Well, you
and
worked out a
sommelier.
formula because we're in the same. We have the same union.
Yeah.
And
We do all have.
We all do.
We have. I don't know. I think you have different ones.
No,
I
no.
refuse to comment on that.
But we all
we
have the same.
I'm
we
the
have,
teachers' union.
We have a problem in that if you put down 20% gratuity, then the waiter wants it all, and you.
Yes, and
it
this has never
becomes
been
a
defined,
big,
and it is a big
hassle.
problem.
Well, how
And-
should we do it, we customers?
Well, in our case, especially since most of our businesses charge, we put a separate place for the waiter and a separate place for the captain. If you don't see the captain, just don't put anything for the
What
captain.
about the sommelier?
We don't have sommelier.
A 21 has.
He has.
Yes.
Well, when you go to Sardis, leave a tip for the sommelier.
Yeah, we send it over.
We were responsible for having the credit card slips include a line for the captain, because we felt that a captain should very definitely
Absolutely.
be considered for service.
Your captains are terrific, I must say. Your captains at 21
Thank
are
you, Al.
extraordinarily talented, and yours too.
Thank you.
And
We're just going back to them. We
your captains
went
have been
completely away
absent for a
from
long
it.
time at Sardis.
Yeah, no, we went
been at
away
21.
from them. We found it wasn't running properly. We're building up the captains now. And then when we're sure that they will be able to handle it, we'll go back to a different menu.
Your
We
young
adapted
people
on that.
at Charcuterie, they are both the waiter and the captain.
Yeah. And at LUCHOW'S, after an absence of 10 years, we're putting back in a captain system because I think it gives better control
think
to the
Oh, it does.
middleman.
The
Captains are
waiters
very
aren't-
important.
You don't have enough skilled waiters.
So would it be fair to say that 20% is the norm and the fair amount
Yes.
for the
Yeah.
cumulative service?
Absolutely.
Now, would that be true outside of New York, or we don't really care about
It
that?
depends upon the amount of service given. A waiter should be given 15%. If there are additional services, they should be compensated. And if one doesn't know, one should simply ask, and it's so discreet.
But if somebody wants to put 20% for all, just specify that is.
And also, David, it's traditionally before the gratuity, not after the gratuity.
I've got to pause again, and we'll come
I'm
in right-
intact.
I want to talk about food critics. I want to talk about a food critic. The New York Times has a food critic that she thinks she has life and death power over restaurants. I agree with her almost never. I disagree with her almost totally. She finds a little gorgeous place in the village. It's awful. She goes to 21 or MAXWELL'S Plum or Gloucester House or Le Cirque. She is highly critical. What is wrong with that personage?
Is somebody going to
Yeah, I'll
answer
answer.
this?
I'll answer. I think she makes mistakes about food. I think that, and she's already given me a bad review. It's the only bad one I ever had. And actually, I like her. But I think that she's a good reporter. But I think that she sometimes doesn't know the food as well as she thinks she does, number one. Number two, she doesn't like spectacle restaurants.
Exactly.
She has never given a good review that I have ever seen to what I would call a major spectacle restaurant, which is what most
Does
of
the
us
New
here
York
have.
Times and Mimi Sheridan, therefore, as its critic, have a disproportionate influence because it's the New York Times?
Not
It's
on
true
a
in the
major
theater,
restaurant.
It's true in movies.
I don't think she
No.
is. I don't think so.
No? She hasn't hurt your
I
business.
think Ms. Sheridan.
No, and I'm very glad that the all management of New York Times.
Yeah, I saw the
coming to
publisher of the New York Times.
They are
Mr.
very. They are
yes.
the best. They are the best
Mr.
of all.
Salzberger was
Well,
there.
them-
Sidney Gruson
Sidney
was there.
Gruson.
Well,
I like
we
them
all- we all-
really
Maybe they don't read her
completely.
column.
Oh, they
Maybe
do.
they don't
Oh,
read
no,
her
they
column.
I
do,
don't know.
and
I
I
really
think they
don't.
love her. She's Howard Cosell. She is. She's terrific. I'm not knocking her. I think that she's great. She
Mimi
creates-
Sheridan is the
she-
Howard Cosell.
Well,
of critic.
Absolutely, she creates controversy, and she makes a lot of splash, and that's good for that sells newspapers.
Yes, but Mimi Sheridan is not the only food critic
No.
or restaurant critic.
No,
there are
she's
other critics
Gail-
who
Gail
I
Green is a
well, I
Gail- I think Gail's terrific.
she can well, you may. She's a very
Yeah, I
nice
hate her.
person. I won't. No, I won't say that. There are other critics. Forbes
fantastic.
magazine,
Very
who
good
appeals to a business readership, has a marvelous review of restaurants. I think they have a fair review of restaurants. They're not always trying to pan a restaurant and to say that it's only deserving of 1 star or no stars.
Who else is good?
What you
David,
do want of a critic, what you want is an
Claiborne is very
advisor
good.
of
Claiborne-
I
restaurants.
think-
Craig Claiborne
Jacobs
was a
is
wonderful
very
critic.
good.
I think one of the things that critics do, and I guess I'm more prone to it than the other gentlemen here because we've been opening new restaurants, is I think she has incredible impact when you're opening. Which is not to say
She sent me
that
down
is,
at Greenwich Village.
that
once.
is not life or death. Because, I mean, basically we're in a people business, and if we have customers that are happy and they tell their friends, you can overcome anything.
She
But it's-
raved about a little restaurant in Greenwich Village called the Tulip.
Yeah, La
La
Tulipe, yeah.
And we rushed down there, my wife and I, just to test her again. And it was a place for young people to apprentice. You know, the place wasn't ready to open. The service was eager but inefficient. The food was indifferent. Mimi Sheridan said, "This is the second coming of the Lord in food terms."
Right.
She is the Howard
Well,
Cosell.
she gave a restaurant
liked-
4 stars about 3 years ago. I'm trying to think of the name of it. It unhappily folded 1 year after it got the 4 stars.
No, that was, she didn't, that was,
Three of them.
Kennedy wrote that review. That was the
No,
great.
no,
No,
but
it was Mimi Sheridan who wrote the
No.
review.
But there are, you know...
What's happened to great food critics? Craig Claiborne was a fabulous
He's a
critic.
great critic. And he...
Where are they?
They'll come
Oh,
along.
he's still
he's
around.
around.
Well,
He's
he
a
still
book
writes,
and,
but he doesn't review.
She has the
Doesn't
biggest
review.
clout of anyone I've ever known.
Who?
Miss Sheridan. She carries the biggest clout.
I don't agree with that. What
I mean,
kind of
the
clout?
reaction
She doesn't,
on
the New York
restaurants and
Times
everything.
does.
Well,
As they do with
That's right.
theater,
That's
as
the
they do with
Times.
movies.
But I don't think it's clout. I mean, it creates... It puts your name...
For
I think
3 weeks.
When we got a review that it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't
was
great.
indifferent,
It was
mediocre.
indifferent. And we had 4 stars from them always before. And I think we still deserve that. But anyway, a lot of people came in the restaurant and said, gee, we read the review, it was terrific. They didn't even read it. And here we were saying, oh my God, look what
Absolutely.
happened, look what she said. And all these people were coming in, our business went immediately up. And this was only a few months ago. And everybody said, we saw
If
the
it's
review
a
was
long
terrific.
review,
My
they think
business,
it's
my
good.
business went up from the very first day. I had, maybe it was the same critic, I don't remember, a bad review once.
We've all had it.
And
Oh, yes.
in August, August 26th. And August and Friday, August 26th is very, quiet. Most of the people go out of town. I never have, up to that point, never have done more than 60, 65 lunch. I remember for lunch. I got in for lunch that day. I was really feeling bad, very, very. Working 14 hours a day, 6 days a week, no sleeping at night.
Right.
And you see somebody can tell you something. Most of all, sometimes they can make mistake like everybody else, but the mistake reflect on you. And I go in, I say today is going to be a disaster. That day we had 145 lunch.
But that's the power of the Times.
I think I called you
And,
that day.
That's
Sirio.
the power
yes,
of the
and the
Times.
people was coming with the article and say, we want your signature on that. I still have all of them. And they suggested to do something. I said, why? I mean, was,
You know what they say,
I
as
was
long
very
as you
happy to be
mention my
chosen.
name.
Right.
No,
a
I
final-
would prefer to be mentioned with the right recognition, but, everybody's human.
We've labeled her the Howard Cosell of critics, and that'll
let's
stay
put-
with her
I
forever.
also believe that
You know,
the
we've
system,
also given her lifetime security, because the moment the New York Times understands that restaurants don't like her, she's there for life.
Right.
The way to get her out of there is to say she's terrific.
Oh, I
I
love her.
love her.
We all know.
Then they say, well, she's part of the establishment. A final question. We've only got a minute. How do you judge other restaurants? I mean, what key things do you observe? The food, the taste of the food, the efficiency of service?
it's a question. To me,
Consistency.
it's a total number of ingredients. I'll go to a restaurant because I like the food, I like the atmosphere. To me, it's calming. I don't like myself because my life is one big hustle bustle in my restaurant. We're an active restaurant. I generally like to go to a restaurant which is a calmer restaurant. I like ambiance.
I don't know. I've seen you in Maxwell's. Not so
That's true.
Now I know why you never.
Well, he comes to see what you're wearing.
Yes, well, I think there are two reasons we go to other restaurants. So one is because we want to learn things and steal things from them, and the other thing is that we want to relax, and
and see how the average. I think the average restaurant now in New York is better than ever. Absolutely. I disagree with people that say that in America people doesn't know how to eat or what they eat. They know more than any place, and the people from Europe come in here and they have a great experience. And they admire for what we do, and I think has improved in the last quality.
This is the greatest restaurant city in the world.
Absolutely. And some of this person that they come, and sometimes I think they were on your show and saying that it was not true, that people didn't know that people should be mean and go in place and complain. They don't know what they're talking about.
Listen, gentlemen, we're out of time. I just want to tell you you're terrific guests, and you run great restaurants, and New York is the Mecca. And the point of doing this show is not to boast, but to explain New York restaurants, great ones to you, so that
And people should complain when
you
not
visit.
happy.
Oh, yes.
People when is not happy should complain.
But I've got
Absolutely.
an idea. I'd like to invite you back in the spring, and we would have a meal, with each of you preparing a course for that meal, you know?
Gladly.
And not only,
Gladly.
but not only do you prepare it, you have to eat it yourself.
Right.
Oh, wait a
Right.
Not in April. I'm going to China in April.
No, how about May? How do you feel about May?
May is great.
You'll all come back.
Absolutely.
Okay, you've got a deal. Thank you. And if you're visiting New York, be sure, the Gloucester House, be sure Warner LEROY can have Tavern on the Green or Maxwell's Plum. 21 is an absolute tradition and a great restaurant. CIRQUE is a brilliant restaurant. Vincent Sardis, you haven't visited New York if you don't go to Sardis' restaurant. And I don't know, CHARLEY's, the steakhouse, American Charcuterie is a breakthrough in restaurant ideas. It's in the CBS building. You must visit it. We'll be back for more show. That's it for tonight. Thank you for being with us, and join us again next week at the same time. Until then, good night.